The Texas Legislative session will begin very, very soon, and in studio to talk about the upcoming session and where he sees it going, State Representative Dustin Burrows. Welcome back.
Chad, thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Just really a few days away now from you having to head down to Austin.
Yeah, I'm actually going down tomorrow. We're starting our rules package, and we're having the debate. We're not going to gut any ethics things, but we're going to try to have some meaningful discourse. I've actually got a change that I think is a good idea, and so I'm taking it down with the committee tomorrow and trying to work that through. So Tuesday kicks off. We get sworn in, and by Thursday we'll be voting on rules and any amendments there too.
And then after that, there is, at least as far as people see bills being voted on, there's a little bit of a lull. That doesn't mean that y'all are just kind of on vacation. Y'all are busy. Y'all are doing a lot of different things, hearing different testimony, hearing different things. But there is kind of a lull between votes, right?
Yeah, so the first week is a lot of exciting things really quickly. Then all of a sudden you sit there and you realize that there's not a lot of committees meeting. There's not a lot of bills going through because we can't actually consider bills on the House floor for a certain period of time. But really it's an opportunity for us to go talk to other legislators and try to work with them, find out what's important to them, where you can support them, where they can support you, figure out the bad things some of them are trying to do, where you actually need to go try to block them because not all the ideas in Austin are actually good ideas and need to pass. But it's an opportunity for us, even though we've been talking about a lot of these things, a lot of us been talking about them, in Lubbock or Corpus Christi, and it hasn't made its way into, the common ideas of what's down in Austin. So it's a chance for us to become educated on what the priorities need to be that we don't already know about, and then what some of the bad things, typically some of the progressives on the left want to do to us.
Well, what are some of the, I think people have heard the priorities from the lieutenant governor. I think people have heard some of the priorities from the governor, and he'll lay those out pretty shortly. What are your priorities?
Yeah, so let me start with the House's priorities. Speaker of the House came out and said CPS reform, top of the priority list. Mental health reform is the second one. Fully support him and look forward to working with him on both of those priorities. Being that the Speaker of the House is elected, of course, by the members, it's going to be the members' priorities that which one of those can kind of make its way into what everyone's talking about. The bills I filed thus far is not the complete set of bills that I intend to file. I've been talking to you about my health care cost bill. The thing that I've been very passionate about, whether it's pharmaceuticals or medical devices or just health insurance, it has become unaffordable for the state, for individuals. I've got some great ideas, great bills put forward to try to address those. That is a very big subject to me. It's new. I want to start the conversation. I want to get some hearings on it. The more I talk to the members, the more they look at me and say, hey, this is a really good idea. So I'm going to work really hard on getting that to be, to popularize it. May not pass all of it next session, but I want to popularize it and get people talking about it because it does so much good for individuals and the state. I've got some bills on school finance. I've got a bill that tries to stop penalizing small rural schools just for being small and rural. Right now they get 37.5% less funding because of the formula. Back in the 80s, before the Republicans took over, it was just an anti-rural bill, and trying to undo that. Got great rural schools, and it costs them more money to actually attract talent sometimes in these smaller communities, and these penalties just don't make any more sense. So trying to get rid of that. I've got a bill I'll file later this week dealing with SNAP benefits. Something that my colleagues on the left of the aisle had filed last session, that they did it for health concerns. I did it because just good government concerns. But one of my colleagues filed a bill last session that I'm going to refile with my name on it and add a little bit to it. But I don't think that SNAP benefits should be used for energy drinks, cookies, candy bars, sodas, and all the bad things. I just don't see any nutritional value in it and think it's a waste of taxpayer money. So later this week, I'm going to have that fight. There'll probably be some on the lobby side who enjoy getting those SNAP benefits that might come fight me on it. But I think it's just good government, and welcome that fight and welcome that conversation as well.
A couple of things that you that you mentioned I want to expand on, and one of those is more money towards rural school districts. Rural school districts are punished right now for being small rural school districts. How is that going to play into? You have some members, mainly it seems in the Senate, on the Senate side of things that want to bring in school vouchers, which would kind of fly. The two seem like they would kind of fly in the face of each other, right? Competing ideas.
So look, I mean, we go down there and we try to find opportunities to work with other members and not against them. I think people who go down there and decide they're going to work against everything and everybody, whether it's Lieutenant Governor or the Speaker of the House or the left or the right, find real quickly that they don't get very far with legislative ideas. And, there's some people locally who think that, I should go down there and try to work against everything the Senate's doing in Dan Patrick, and that's just foolish. I mean, it's just bad politics to begin with. And so I understand, I hear from my members who represent Houston and Dallas. Yeah. And they say they have some real problems with inner city schools. And I don't know if their ideas are the right way to fix it, but I'm going to give them a fair audience. I'm going to hear them out. But at the same time, if I'm going to give them a fair audience, they need to hear me out on what's important for rural Texas. And maybe we can find something that works together and maybe we can't. But, when we're talking about school finances and funding, and all the Senate priorities that they have, they're going to have to find people in the House to want to sponsor it. And we're going to have to do some things. We're going to have to come together and find bigger bills to, do any of this. And so if we're talking about just the sheer politics of it, nobody needs to go down there just to say, thumb their nose at something the Senate's doing, but also say, oh, but by the way, I need you to take care of rural schools at the same time. That doesn't work well.
I just wonder because you do have, they are kind of competing ideas, aren't they? The idea, and the governor is making a push, I think, towards school vouchers. He's talked about how vouchers would even help those who are in special ed. And what you're bringing in, and I think there are a lot of others who are rural lawmakers, are saying, well, our districts need more money, and so you have two competing ideas, all from conservatives.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, you have some people who are just religiously opposed to any idea of school choice. I'm not that person. Right. My priority is not that I have not filed a voucher bill. I don't intend to file a voucher bill because my district, it's not incredibly popular and it's not incredibly what we need. That being said, at the end of the day, if people are graduating from Houston ISD, Harris County ISD, and they don't have an education, we're eventually going to get to take care of them, whether we're jailing them or whatnot. Pay for it now or pay for it later. I don't know if some of the proposals coming out is what needs to be fixed in Houston or not, but I do recognize we're all in this boat together. Other big cities and other states have done this. I will promise this to everyone listening. I'll do my homework. I'll look at the results that have come out of Cleveland that maybe are getting ready to come out of Nevada, which Jeb Bush did in Florida, and see if there's some benefit to the urban schools, because at the end of the day, I don't want to pay to warehouse Harris County people because, they didn't get a good education. Yeah. But at the same time, if we're going to have the conversation about Harris County needs, if we're going to have that conversation, we need to be heard in rural West Texas about what our needs are, and they're just different. It's a diverse state, and it doesn't mean one's better than the other. It just means we've all got to work together and not against each other.
So we could have both in place, in theory.
I think the only way you're ever going to get to any sort of school choice reform that the Houston delegation is appointing is they're going to have to do enough good things for my schools to help them out, to make it something that it's hard to say no to.
Well, and it's not only out here. I mean, we've had lawmakers from East Texas, rural East Texas, who have come on and said, hey, there's a balancing act. That's got to be done. Real quickly on the speaker, there's been a couple of stories that have come out this week. One today out of the Austin American-Statesman. It doesn't look like he's going to be challenged, Joe Strauss. I don't think that's a shock to anybody. How do you anticipate this session going under Speaker Strauss?
He is called for two different priorities. I found common ground with him on both. I'm very excited about the two big tasks he's undertaken. I know that there's some other members in the House that are trying to, get low bill numbers on their bills, and there's some good ideas out there. I do not think there is not a speaker's race. I mean, period, the end. And I don't anticipate one. I know and talk to a lot of the members. And I just don't see a speaker's race this time, so Joe Strauss will be the next Speaker of the House. I look forward to the opportunity to work with him for, advancing good rural conservative values initiatives, and, look for an audience to be heard on those.
When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. A lot more to get into with the upcoming legislative session. State Representative Dustin Burrows in studio. Let's see. One of the items that the governor has brought up, and he's brought this up, I think, for over a year now, Convention of States. Is that something that's going to get play in the House, you think?
We passed it in the House, died in the Senate.
Yeah.
Despite some of the mythology that the House is not as conservative as the Senate, we actually passed a sanctuary city bill back in the 82nd session and passed some Article 5 stuff last session. The Senate didn't do it. So I think you'll see us support the governor. It's been maybe his number one agenda item. I don't know. But certainly he's taken the time, written 90 pages of very convincing arguments about things that we could do to try to restore some state rights, 10th Amendment solutions, which I fully support him doing. And you'll see that come through. 17th Amendment, just a bunch of other things in there. And, Governor's very thoughtful, and he's been studying this for a while and has become some very good proposals.
Gun legislation. I think you have filed a bill that would get rid of, right? Get rid of the fee for getting a license to carry?
Yes, phenomenal bill.
Yeah, and there's also another bill filed by one of your colleagues, Jonathan Stickland, that would call for constitutional carry, which you would not have a license for open carry. I don't know if there's been a big push on that front. Where are we on gun legislation? Have you talked to anybody about the piece of legislation that you have?
Yeah, I filed my bill. I saw a couple weeks later the Senate filed the same bill and talked about it being a priority. So they recognized what a good bill this was that we filed, and I think that's got a real opportunity this session. I've talked to the NRA, the TSRA, some other gun groups, and said this is really important that we just get rid of the fees. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, who is the user of that license? Well, it's not me. I mean, if you believe in the Heller decision and what it stands for, the Second Amendment is a right of self-protection, and I believe it extends beyond the threshold of your house. That's where Heller actually was limited. And so I should have the right, except for very limited circumstances, to carry, whether it's open or concealed. And if the state wants me to have a license to show, so law enforcement can easily identify if I've met those qualifications, the state's really the user of that license. And so I think they should bear the burden of paying for it. Plus, if you actually go through, it's become a profit center, and there's something really wrong with fees becoming a profit center. We have one of the highest amount of fees in the entire country. A ton of exemptions, and so I just want to make sure that everybody who gets those well-intended exemptions extends to guys like you and me, Chad.
What about constitutional carry? Has there been any push? Anybody calling your office saying, "Hey, we need this"?
Yeah, I've talked to some people about that. It's certainly people are very much in favor of it. People are very much opposed to it. I get calls both ways. I don't see it coming through and passing next session. A lot of states have gone to permitless carry. I don't know if we're even quite there yet. There may be some debate on permitless carry. I know of at least one other rep who's thinking of filing that bill where you still have to meet the same qualifications. You just don't have to carry that permit. But I tend to think that my bill, just getting rid of the fees, it's got the best chance.
Yeah. What about campus carry? Is there going to be any cleanup work on that's going to be needed? Or is everyone pretty happy? Not the Democrats. Not the Democrats, and probably not the presidents of the universities, but Republican-wise, are people happy?
Great bill. We need to take a look at where some of the gun-free zones have actually been. I haven't dug down into that probably as much as I need to, but I want to make sure that universities are being thoughtful. We gave them a little discretion last session and need to make sure that they aren't using the exceptions to swallow the rule. I get it. There may need to be a couple exceptions, but if they've gone too broadly, we may need to take a look back at that to make sure that people have the right to be safe in most areas on campus. Maybe if there's some federal funding or some weird things attached to it, there ought to be special circumstances, but those ought to be very narrow and very small. And what I want to see is how's that exemption been applied?
What do you think will be the most or one of the most contentious issues in this legislative session?
Oh, there's been a lot of talk about the bathroom bill. I don't know where that's actually headed. I haven't even actually seen the bathroom bill, so I really don't even know what it says. I don't know where that's actually going. Here's one that I think will be a surprise contentious bill that needs to get done. CPS reform is going to include some protections, some religious liberty protections for our Boys Ranch and our Buckners and groups that have decided they don't want to adopt to same-sex couples, and that they can't have state funding or be discriminated against if they make that choice. And I know that Representative Frank out of Wichita Falls is probably going to carry that. I've talked to him. He has my full support. I mean, historically in West Texas has been our religious organizations who do a phenomenal job of going out there and trying to identify good foster family, adoptive families. And I want to give them some protection that if they make the choice, and we can, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with that. But what I know is if you start saying you have to adopt to same-sex couples, they'll go out of business. And I don't know what we're going to do about that. And we should not discriminate against them. And so we're going to file some religious liberty protections for them. It's a very good bill. Needs to pass, but there's going to be intense pushback from the radical left, LGBTQAZ, progressive community on that, and they're going to say, bad things about us. Yeah. It's not true, but we're going to protect our guys.
Well, I mean, it's something that we have seen in the past. These protections, they need to be in place for religious institutions, for nonprofits, because they come under fire all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Chad, look. Here's the greatest irony. You watched this group who was applauding these designers for not selling dresses to Melania Trump, saying, well, that's great, the First Amendment right, they're speaking out, they don't like the Trumps because they're so bad. They turn around and they say the bakers in Oregon should not have that same right to refuse to bake a cake and participate in a gay ceremony. Yeah. I mean, if they don't understand the hypocrisy in that, in those conflicting viewpoints, I can't help them. Yeah. But it's just darn hypocritical of them. And so, but there's this agenda out there, and it's coming to Texas through our more urban areas, start on the east and left coasts and coming through. And we've got to lay down some foundation, because even though, we had a little bit of relief and reprieve because of a change in Washington, D.C., this fight's coming to us, and we've got to be forward thinking and stopping it.
Can you hang out one more segment?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. When we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about the bathroom bill. We don't know which direction it's going, but you already have people in the business community who are upset about it. So talk about that and get into a few other issues when we come back with State Representative Dustin Burrows. All right, Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. State Representative Dustin Burrows in studio. Let's talk about the bathroom bill, because that's going to be making headlines until something is actually done or not done on it, and no one really knows where it's going. Some say it's only going to target schools, and others say it's going to target all businesses, and be like the North Carolina bathroom bill. What are your thoughts? Do we need a bathroom bill? Does it need to target only schools? Are you worried about the NCAA pulling out of the state of Texas and never bringing, college sports back here again? What's going to happen?
Well, at the end of the day, I have no idea what this bill is going to be saying. It's the most talked about unfiled bill that we've actually had. You dig in a little bit of some of the opponents' criticisms of it, and, they talk about, well, we're going to lose the Super Bowl in 2017. Well, no, we're not. The bill couldn't even be passed by then, so that's a ridiculous statement. You start peeling back some of the numbers, and I mean, they're just ludicrous that they're trying to do that. At the end of the day, threats from big companies is not going to affect the way we deal with values legislation, the way we deal with public safety legislation. Again, in West Texas, we probably don't have a lot of these people following women into bathrooms and doing things. But, at the end of the day, I do want to go to Dallas and Austin, and I've got a wife. And, this is probably coming to us again from the east and left coast. And, if we need a bill to stop it from happening so she can feel that she can use the facilities in private and safely, I've got no objection to that. And especially at school levels, I think it probably makes more sense there. This all started, and I saw an Amarillo news article about it. I mean, people want to say this started with, some conservatives. Actually, it really didn't. This started with the Obama administration trying to re-engineer and, normalize behavior a lot of us don't agree with in the schools. And we read about it, we heard about it, we saw some school districts try to adopt it, and we pushed back. We pushed back strongly. And even though, his administration and this radical social re-engineering thing that he was trying to get done, thank God it is done with, those groups will still be there. Eventually, we'll have a new president, and we need to go ahead and take some safeguards and figure out where those fights are, whether this is the bill or others. I got to actually see the bill first. I will read it before I vote on it.
Well, now, that's not always a popular thing to do, right?
We will actually read the bill before we vote on it. I promise you that.
Well, and I think, again, it's one of those where, like you said, nobody knows what this is going to be aimed at. You had one lawmaker who said, I can't remember her name, but she had said that this is designed just at the schools.
Dawn Buckingham.
Is that something that you think is more palatable for your colleagues?
I'm not really – I guess you got to be worried about what's palatable and what's not to pass it. So, there's that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, look, I don't know what this bill is going to do, what it's going to try to accomplish. It's going to have a fair hearing, probably one of those hearings I'm going to tune into, to see what the issues are. But, you asked me my gut reaction to, men need to stay in men's restrooms, especially in our schools.
Yeah. Let's see, budget. That's going to be probably a battle. How's what are you hearing about that? How much money is the state going to have coming in, and what are the concerns there?
Yeah, so we start the session off trying to find money. We've asked every state agency, other than Save and Accept a few, PubEd and CPS and some others, to come up with a way they can save money by 4%. Interestingly, on budget last session, I had an amendment that said every agency should go ahead and estimate every year what a 2%, 4%, and 10% cut would look like if they had to do that. I think it's just good ideas to begin with. Actually, that was a Rudy Giuliani idea that came out of New York City, the way he tried to get them back on economic, course. So I don't think the process of looking for budget cuts is a bad thing. Sometimes when you have weeds growing in the garden, you got to peel them out. And so even though it's a tight budget, certainly we don't love tight budgets. We're like anybody else. There's critical needs that need funding, but it's not a bad opportunity to dig into the state agencies and try to figure out where some cuts can be made. And so we'll figure it out. We're not going to raise taxes. We'll figure out how to do it with the money we have. We always do. And that's kind of what some of the gnashing of teeth is going to be, as I've already seen it, is every agency has come and pled their case why they should be the exception of not having to do the 4% cut already.
Right.
So,
What when you get into session and, because of this show, with Robert Pratt in the afternoons, we're obviously going to be talking a lot about the legislative session. How much does it matter when you have citizens who call your office, who email you, who send it, and not only you, but other lawmakers? How much does that influence the direction y'all go?
Yeah, great question. Certainly, a lot of the great ideas that I have come across have come from just people who've called in after listening to this show, or other ways they've seen me at town halls and said, "Hey, I heard you talking. What do you think about this?" I had one just the other day on CPS that had a really great idea. So I welcome the ideas. I really do. So if you hear of something that we're doing and you have concerns and it's, your idea and it's not that you're being put up to it by some sort of outside interest group and you call just for the sake of calling to light it up, I'm probably going to get a hold of me if it's not right in the thick of session, and we're going to discuss it, because I look to people to give me good ideas and to get some feedback and, push on it. The other side of it is we do get a lot of calls, not even people that are in district, but, we decide we're going to do something. And some third-party outside interest group says, light up these guys' phone boards. And we start, all of a sudden, you walk in and your phones are just lighting up, and you realize that half the people who are calling really don't know what is going on. They've just been told to call and harass us. Yeah. And so, most of them are outside of the district. But the calls that, if you've got a good idea, you have some concerns, I'd love to get the feedback. All
right, great. State Representative Dustin Burrows, as always, appreciate your time. And we wish you the best of luck down in Austin. I know we'll be visiting quite a bit.